If you've been keeping livestock for any length of time, you already know what's happened to feed prices over the last several years. A 50-pound bag of layer pellets that used to cost $12 now runs $18, $20, sometimes $22 at the feed store. Rabbit pellets have gone up. It's one of the few costs on a small farm that never seems to go in the right direction. And the difficult part is that there's no obvious way around it. You can reduce waste. You can grow a garden and share the extras with your animals. You can ferment your feed to make it stretch further. All of those things help, but at the end of the month, you're still buying bags. What I want to talk about today is something different. It's a system that doesn't just reduce your feed bill. It replaces a meaningful portion of it permanently with something that grows on your property without being planted, without being watered by hand, and without being fertilized with anything you need to buy. It's a pond, a small, managed backyard pond that you set up specifically to grow animal feed. And if you've ever experimented with reducing feed costs on your own property, let me know what actually worked for you down in the comments. I'm always curious what systems people are testing. This is not just a decorative pond, not a fish pond in the traditional sense, a working pond, one that produces high-protein plant matter your chickens, ducks, geese, and rabbits will eat readily, week after week, as long as the water stays warm. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how this system works, what it takes to build one, and what you can realistically expect it to produce. Let's go through it step by step. And if you're interested in practical systems like this, things that make a small property more productive and less dependent on constant inputs, consider subscribing. That's mostly what we talk about here. The first thing to understand is that a feed pond works because of two specific plants, Duckweed and Azolla. If you've ever seen a still pond with a fine green coating on the surface, that's duckweed. It's one of the smallest flowering plants in the world, and it grows in water. No soil needed, no seeds to plant each season. You introduce a starter culture once, and if conditions are right, it multiplies on its own. What makes duckweed remarkable as a feed source is its protein content. On a dry weight basis, duckweed contains between 35 and 45% crude protein. To put that in perspective, the soybean meal that forms the backbone of most commercial poultry feed runs at roughly 44 to 48% crude protein. Duckweed is in the same range, growing in water on your property for free once the colony is established. Beyond protein, duckweed contains a solid profile of amino acids, along with pigments that are actually beneficial for egg yolk color and overall bird health. It's not a complete feed on its own, but as a supplement, and potentially a significant one, it's hard to find anything that competes with it at zero cost. Azolla is the second plant worth knowing. It's an aquatic fern, much smaller than it sounds, and it also floats on the surface of still or slow-moving water. Azolla is slightly lower in protein than duckweed, typically 25 to 30% crude protein by dry weight. But it brings something duckweed doesn't. It fixes its own nitrogen from the atmosphere through a partnership with a microorganism it carries inside its fronds. That means Azolla can grow in water with very low nutrient levels and still thrive. It's a self-fertilizing crop growing on water. Both plants are palatable to poultry and rabbits. Ducks take to duckweed immediately. It's a natural part of their diet in the wild. Chickens and rabbits usually come around within a few days of first exposure. Beyond the plants themselves, a managed pond produces aquatic insects, pond snails, and small invertebrates. Chickens and ducks will actively forage at the pond edge if given access, finding additional protein that requires no effort from you at all. That self-harvesting behavior is one of the things that makes this system genuinely low maintenance once it's running. This is where a lot of people assume it's out of reach for a small property. It isn't. A lot of these systems sound complicated until you actually see the numbers broken down step by step. A functional feed pond can start at 100 square feet, 10 feet by 10 feet. That's smaller than most garden beds. It's enough surface area to establish a duckweed colony that produces consistent harvests, and it's completely manageable for one person to build by hand over a weekend. For most small acreage keepers managing a mixed flock of 10 to 15 birds, a pond in the range of 150 to 300 square feet hits the most useful sweet spot. Large enough to produce a daily or every other day harvest. Small enough to stay clean and balanced without a lot of intervention. If digging isn't an option on your property, whether because of rocky soil, terrain, or a rental situation, you have alternatives. A large galvanized stock tank works well. An IBC tote cut in half gives you roughly 125 gallons of growing surface. A pre-formed rigid pond liner set into a shallow depression in the ground is another option. The system is flexible. What matters most is water volume and sunlight. Let's go through the actual build, because this is where it becomes real for most people. Choosing your site. Start here before you do anything else. Duckweed and Azolla needs sunlight. Aim for a spot that gets at least 4 to 6 hours of direct sun per day. Full sun produces the fastest growth. Some afternoon shade in very hot climates can actually be helpful. Duckweed slows down significantly in water temperatures above 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So a little shade in the hottest part of the day keeps things productive longer into summer. Avoid spots directly under trees. Falling leaves break down in the water and can throw off the balance. Digging. For a ground-level pond, dig to a depth of 18 to 24 inches at the deepest point. You don't need to go deeper than 2 feet for a duckweed system. The depth provides thermal stability. The water stays cooler in summer and takes longer to freeze in fall, but beyond 2 feet you're adding work for minimal gain. Shape doesn't matter much. Rectangular ponds are easiest to line and calculate. Irregular shapes work fine too. Lining. Use a 45 mil EPDM rubber liner or a heavy-duty polyethylene pond liner rated for outdoor use. When you cut your liner, leave at least 12 inches of overlap beyond the edge of the pond on all sides. Fold it in neatly at the corners, anchor the edges with flat stones or packed soil, and trim any excess once the water weight has settled it in. Filling. Fill with water and let it sit for 48 to 72 hours before introducing any plants. If you're using municipal tap water, this waiting period allows chlorine to off-gas naturally. You can speed this up slightly by running the water from a height to aerate it, but time alone works fine. Introducing your starter culture. Source duckweed and azolla from an aquatic plant supplier, a local farm pond with the landowner's permission, or another small farmer in your area. A small bag, even a quart of material, is enough to seed a 100 square foot pond. Under warm conditions with adequate nutrients, duckweed can double its mass every 1 to 2 days. A starter culture introduced in spring can fill a pond surface within 2 to 3 weeks. Nutrients. This is a step people sometimes skip and then wonder why their pond stays thin. Duckweed needs nitrogen and phosphorus to grow well. Without nutrients in the water, growth slows dramatically. The simplest approach is to add a small amount of aged compost tea weekly, just a cup or two per 100 square feet of water surface, diluted in a watering can. Compost tea feeds the plant without clouding the water or creating an imbalance. A more elegant long-term solution: position your pond downslope from your compost area or chicken run so that natural runoff carries nutrients into the water passively. This is a well-documented approach in integrated small farm systems, and when it works well, you may not need to add anything at all. Once your pond surface has a good even coverage of duckweed, dense enough that you can't see open water underneath, you're ready to start harvesting. Use a fine mesh net, a wide kitchen strainer, or a piece of window screen bent into a scoop. Skim across the surface slowly and lift the duckweed out in a single motion. Let it drain for a moment over the pond before transferring it to a bucket or tray. The key rule with harvesting: never take more than a third of the surface at one time. Remove 20 to 30% per session and leave the rest. Duckweed regrows from what you leave behind, not from the water itself. Take too much and you'll set the colony back by a week or more. How often you harvest depends on your water temperature and sunlight. In peak summer conditions, a productive pond may need harvesting every 2 to 3 days to keep up with growth. In spring and fall, once a week is more typical. A 200 square foot pond in warm conditions can produce 3 to 5 pounds of fresh duckweed per week, which when dried concentrates down to roughly a pound of dry material with a protein content comparable to a commercial protein supplement. Duckweed can be fed fresh or dried. Fresh duckweed can go straight from the pond into a shallow tray or feed pan. Ducks will eat it without hesitation. Scatter it on the water surface of their drinking area, and they'll clean it up in minutes. Chickens may approach it cautiously at first. Give them 3 or 4 days. Once they associate it with food, they'll compete for it. Rabbits will eat both duckweed and azolla as a green supplement alongside their regular hay and pellets. Dry duckweed has a longer shelf life and can be stored and added to feed as a protein supplement. To dry it, spread fresh harvested duckweed in a thin layer on a clean screen or flat tray and set it in full sun. It dries in a few hours on a warm day. Store dried duckweed in a sealed container in a cool, dry place and use it within a few weeks. If you're feeding laying hens, published research has shown that replacing up to 20% of commercial layer ration with dried duckweed has no significant effect on egg production or quality. At that substitution rate, a productive pond could meaningfully reduce your purchase feed on a weekly basis. A note on integration with fish: if your pond is large enough, 300 square feet or more, you can add tilapia. Tilapia feed largely on algae and aquatic plant matter, grow quickly, and can be harvested as feed for your poultry or as food for your family. They require warm water, ideally above 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and are best suited to warmer climate zones. In cooler climates, they can be grown seasonally from spring to fall. It can also work in an old bathtub or bucket. Here is an honest picture of what this system can and can't do. In a warm climate with a 200 square foot pond running from spring through fall, a well-managed duckweed system can realistically offset between 20 and 40% of purchase feed for a small mixed flock of 10 to 15 birds. That's not a minor reduction. That's a recurring savings every single week for the duration of the growing season. from infrastructure that costs less than $100 to build. In warmer regions, the Gulf Coast, the Southwest, much of California, a feed pond can produce year-round with minimal interruption. In colder climates, duckweed slows significantly below 50 degrees Fahrenheit and stops producing in freezing temperatures. Many northern growers maintain a small indoor starter culture through winter, a bowl of duckweed on a sunny windowsill, and re-inoculate the pond each spring. The system does not run itself in year one. Expect to spend a few minutes every 2 or 3 days checking the pond, harvesting, and adjusting nutrient levels if growth seems slow. By year 2, once you understand the rhythms of your specific pond, it becomes largely routine. What it will not do is replace feed entirely. It's a feed reduction system, not a feed elimination system. But honestly, even cutting feed costs by 20 or 30% changes the math quite a bit for a small flock. And for something built from a liner, some water, and a handful of plants, the return is genuinely hard to match anywhere else on a small property. There's a particular kind of satisfaction that comes from watching an animal eat something your land produced for free. It doesn't happen instantly. The first week, you're watching a thin layer of green on open water. A few weeks later, the surface is solid. And then you're skimming more than you can feed in a sitting, and the bucket fills up faster than it used to. That's when a small farm starts feeling less like a series of expenses and more like a working system, one where the pieces support each other. If you decide to try this, start small. A simple 10 by 10 pond is enough to learn the system, and once you see how productive it can become, expanding it is easy. And if you enjoy practical low-input systems like this, things that reduce costs and make a property work more efficiently, there are more videos here that go deeper into exactly that. Take care of your animals, take care of your land, and I'll see you in the next video.